Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. The meeting this evening will be live streamed as per policy 7. Regular and special meetings of the board may be streamed live, archived, and accessed online. The board reserves at its sole discretion via motion at any meeting the right to not stream live or archive a meeting or a portion of a meeting. Further, the board reserves the right to edit any recorded portion of a meeting. I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Langley Board of Education at 7:03 p.m. I would like to acknowledge that the Langley School District is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Matsqui, Kwantlen, Katzie, and Semiahmoo First Nations. We gather here tonight in an understanding of the importance of Yayistal, Skekiyais, and Natsamat, Letsamat, uniting ourselves with one mind, one heart, to ensure that we support and inspire all learners to reach their full potential. I would like to welcome everyone here this evening. First of all, to my far left, Trustee Fox and Trustee Ward, Trustee Rye, Secretary Treasurer Brian Isley, myself, Candy Ashdown, our Superintendent Mel Gill, Trustee Dickinson, calling you by your first name, Trustee Neufeld, and Trustee Wilson. And I would also like to welcome our guests this evening. Well, actually, first of all, in the far back that are doing the important work of live streaming this for us, I'd like to welcome Dale Vo, Paul Baboa, Vincent Montefrio, and my apologies if I'm not pronouncing your names correctly to all of you. And then next with our partner groups, I'd like to welcome Taylor Hollaboff, is our acting president of QP 1260, Tyrone Kennedy, acting VP of QP 1260, Tanya Kerr, LTA president, Sean Davids, LPVPA vice president, Alicia Rumpel, president of DPAC, and I hope I haven't forgotten anybody. And if I have, please accept my apologies. Oh, my apologies. Oh my goodness. Yes, I did. I forgot very important people. So also with us this evening, Woody Bradford, Deputy Superintendent, Lisa Lanchberry, Assistant Superintendent, Marcello Moino, Assistant Superintendent, Shin Chand, Assistant Secretary Treasurer, Joanne Abshire. Is Joanne here? I haven't seen her. Oh, she is. Joanne Abshire, Communications Manager, and Judy Swanson, Executive Assistant. And my apologies. Oh, and Debbie Jones is also joining us this evening as Executive Assistant for HR. All right. Okay, so our first item on the agenda is a report from in camera. Vice Chair Dickinson, would you like to give us the report?
Okay. Yes, we talked about personnel and property.
Thank you. Trustees, you have the consent agenda. You have the consent agenda in front of you. Can I have a mover that the Board of Education adopts the consent agenda as presented? Moved by Trustee Fox. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Trustee Neufeld. It's been moved and seconded that the Board of Education adopt the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, the question on the motion is that the Board of Education adopt the consent agenda as amended. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Oh, sorry, it was amended. Oh my goodness. Yep, my apologies. The motion is that the Board of Education adopt the consent agenda as presented. Can I have a show of hands in favor, please? All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Carried. Okay. You have the agenda in front of you. Do I have a mover that the Board of Education accept the agenda as presented? Moved by Trustee Dickinson, second by Trustee Fox. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, can I have all those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. First of all, this evening we have, oh, actually, sorry, I think I'm skipping ahead here. Oh, no, I'm not. We have a delegation from Langley Environmental Partners Society. And I'd like to welcome Amanda Smith, the Agricultural Program Coordinator, as well as, my apologies, Erin Lavalley, the Education Coordinator. Welcome this evening.
Oh, thank you for having us. Our presentation, is that ready to go? Okay, wonderful. Thank you for having us today, and we are here to present a presentation just on some of the work that we've done with the Langley School District. So we are LEPS, the Langley Environmental Partner Society, and I'm Amanda and Erin, and we're here to show you all the work we've been doing. So our outline of our presentation is as follows. So we'll have an introduction briefly, and we will go into the LEPS education program. Show you what we do for our support to your schools. We'll discuss briefly Nature's Classroom, the Langley Learning Farm, the WAVE program, the Nickel School Garden, and follow up to close with our funding partners.
All right. So an introduction on LEPS. So we're a nonprofit charitable organization that's been in Langley since 1993. So we are on our 30th year this year. We're going to have a lot of fun celebrations and do like 12 months of like a monthly community event to kick off our 30th year. We do have full-time and seasonal staff. Our staff does grow quite a bit in the summertime because we're lucky enough to have a lot of summer students. Our core programs, you see, it's education, environmental education, where we're in classrooms. We do watershed restoration, so that's a lot of full-time outside work. We do agricultural stewardship, Amanda can speak to that, and habitat conservation and restoration. So again, a lot of outdoor work, getting dirty and enriching Langley's environmental habitat and natural areas. So where I come in, what I do full time is I'm an education program coordinator. Our education program has been around since 1999, so almost the full 30 years. We've been also active in classrooms all around Langley. Also, we're lucky enough to be invited into Surrey schools, Abbotsford schools, and we also get requests to go to sometimes Vancouver, Maple Ridge, Chilliwack, but sometimes it's a little bit too far for our reach, but we're lucky enough to be invited. Sometimes we can say yes. So a lot of our 75%, I'd say, of our classroom, of our workshops are in the classroom, visiting classes, kindergarten, all the way up to high school sometimes, but mostly K-8. And then we're also doing outdoor programming with those classrooms. It's where we take them to a local stream. We could go in their back 40 or their property and teach them about the native species on their property, habitat protection. Then we also have our Langley Learning Farm, the Langley Demonstration Garden, and throughout all of this program, we see about 7,500 students throughout the year. So it's a lot of fun. We get to have a lot of students participating in our programs. So kindergarten through 8, we offer 18 workshops. Lots of fun there, lots of fun. Got some pictures here. All of our programs, 18 of them, are curriculum connected. So that connects to the new BC curriculum that came out, I think it was 2016, that it was fully integrated into the district. So we were really lucky to be able to connect all of our programs. Topics include waste management, biodiversity, conservation. Got salmon and wildlife, where we're teaching salmon life cycles, wildlife and their habitat species. We're also talking now a lot in partnership with the Township of Langley about climate change. So Township has their climate action approach. So we're in classes teaching and working on our partnership with Township of Langley to let them know what's happening in these 5 big steps that the township has. So we're able to provide a workshop on climate change, and then also a big component is agriculture and food growth. So here is our education rubric. This is based off of that new curriculum, current curriculum, and it's social sciences and sciences. And each one here, it's a little bit smaller to see, but we do have this available if you wanted to. I think it was distributed also throughout the district here, is that these are all of the connections that each of our workshop has into the curriculum. So we hit a lot of goals, a lot of targets, and a lot of these connections. So the teachers are able to use this rubric to find out how our programs actually connect to the curriculum. And from there, check, you get to have that curriculum connection in your classroom and not have to do all the work. You can bring LEPs in to do that. So these are some of the other ways that we can support beyond the elementary or the younger years. So K to 12, we can host garbage cleanups or give the opportunity and the tools to be able to do a garbage cleanup in the local area. Sometimes that's right in the backyard of the school because they're all nearby or located close to a storm drain or a ravine habitat. So then we can do storm drain. We can offer storm drain marking where we lend out the kit, and this has got the stencil, the paint, the maps, the safety equipment for classes to do so. Invasive plant control. So again, that's likely on or nearby the school property, tackling invasive species, blackberries, Himalayan blackberry, for example, English ivy, lamium, all those little ones that are usually easy to pull, but that are everywhere. And the students have a very easy time identifying them too. So that's an excellent one to do. We can do tree planting and greening up the school space. School garden support, so if that school needs a community garden or if they're hoping to establish one, we've done that a lot in the past. Fish releases, this one's been a challenge throughout COVID. We haven't had as many of them, but they're starting to come back. Usually that's one that we have around Earth Day, and we can invite a few select schools that maybe are nearby one of our enhancement programs to come out and do some salmon releases. A lot of fun. And special events or symposiums. So we did have one this past October, and we partnered with local high schools and invited them to Fort Langley or Langley Fine Arts to do a climate symposium where it was a youth action approach, and we had almost 400 students attend that one. Here we go. Let
Okay.
Amanda, come on over.
Yeah, so this is where some of our programming starts to shift. So Erin was talking more about workshops that would be in the classroom and to some degree out on the school property, but now we're getting into actual programming. So Nature's Classroom, and you can kind of read through this, and I don't know if anybody's had a chance to. There's a lot of text on this screen, but I can sum it up very simply is that Nature's Classroom is from grades 3 to 7. Typically we get enrollments mostly around grade 3, 4, and 5. And it is essentially where the schools or classes end up coming to, we started out with the Langley demonstration garden. Now we actually are using the space of the Langley Learning Farm because it's under an acre. That's much more of a larger space when you're dealing with 22 to 27 children. So it is actually a 6-week program, and that's usually tends to start in about the first week of April. And we see these classes, we have about 6 of them per year. Every 2 weeks. So that means that these students actually get that benefit of coming every 2 weeks, 6 times as part of a field trip, but also we do a lot of curriculum coverages in terms of that too. So we don't have a rubric based on that yet for Nature's Classroom, and we probably will be making one this year, but usually we start bringing in some mathematical things in terms of our curriculum, and a little bit of plant biology as well, especially when they get to be little soil scientists. So we cover everything, and they grow their own food, and usually we have some things that we can taste test that they've planted when they start week 1, and in that last week they get to have a little harvest celebration of things that they actually grew. So it is one of these wonderful things that I have teachers that have come every single year with all of their students. So that is, I've been doing it for 11 years. It's quite amazing. Okay, so then this is the Langley Learning Farm. So this is where we had sort of established the Langley Learning Farm at the Derek W. Arboretum, and it is targeting grades 9 to 12. So it is a facility to demonstrate community-based food skills and education space for farm education, and which actually does contribute to local food security. So at the Derek W. Arboretum, it is an open space for the public to come to. It is a safe space. And there's a lot of dogs that get to be walked there. So it's a really wonderful place for these kids to get outside. And it is in partnership with the Langley Sustainable Agriculture Foundation and the Langley Secondary Schools. So knowing where the Arboretum is and Langley Secondary, it was a natural fit. So through that school, we do environmental science work. We do once a week. They get to walk over with their teacher and do anywhere from, again, soil testing and plant biology. They also do hands-on work, all farm related, and they get to learn some really great work skills and also environmental awareness. So you're noticing a bit of a theme with us. And one really great thing that we kind of came and walked away with for the last 2 years is the WAVE program, which is hitting grades 10 and 11, sometimes grade 12, depending on where that student is in their volunteer hours. But WAVE, I don't know how many people know what WAVE is, but it actually is an employer program. So it's getting these kids, getting their volunteer hours, getting them more into kind of like that employment role for their first job, learning skills, all what it comes to that. So in this way, we're acting as the employer. And it is depending upon the student. It's anywhere from 40 to 50 hours of volunteer time. It gets signed off, and it's been proved really successful at Langley Secondary School, knowing that it is such a close proximity. They can walk over after school in a buddy system, and it's been very popular to the point where some of these teenagers actually, after their hour is done, they like to hang out at that park. So we actually at the end actually have paid summer jobs for some of these students. They go through an interview process and we actually hire them for the summer. Nickelmeckle's Elementary School Garden. I know I'll let you guys read the screens. I know we actually have a very ambitious presentation, but we are in conjunction with Nickelmeckle Elementary School, and these are our funding partners. So you can see that we are work with the city and the township and have various other funders as well. And here we go. Here are questions. Sorry, I blew through that last slide.
Yeah, thank you so much. Those are our contact information there if you need to reach us anytime.
Okay, yeah, any questions?
I don't think we have.
Thank you so much. Do any trustees have any questions for clarification? No? Oh, Trustee Fox?
Just quickly, you said you offer 18 programs in total. What percentage of those are in classroom and what percentage are outdoors?
To adapt them to an outside environment. So we just bring the workshop outside and we're still able to do it. So a lot of them are adaptable to be given outside, but 9 out of 10 of them are, in class. We can adapt them to the outside, and then we have a few more that are strictly outside, can't do them inside.
My second question is, what percentage of schools have you worked with over the 30 years in Langley?
Yeah. Most recently, my first school that I had never had a chance to was Peterson Road. So just one of those schools that's super close by to our office here and in the Murrayville kind of community area here. And we finally had a chance to make contact with Peterson Road. I think maybe years and years ago we were with them, but in my time at LEPS, that was my first time. So I've been, I think, to every school in Langley. Yeah, you're welcome.
Trustee or Vice Chair Dickinson, sorry.
Hi, Holly. Yeah, we've been emailing each other. Yeah. Hi, Holly.
A class to do a program in May, I think it is. So I'm thrilled to see you guys here, and I really hope that we can strengthen this partnership between LEPS and the school board, and perhaps look for some other opportunities with garden schools, outdoor schools. So thank you so much for coming tonight, you guys. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving along on our agenda this evening. Next, we have superintendent's reports. So I will pause.
Thank you, Chair. This evening, I want to introduce our Deputy Superintendent Woody Bradford and District Principal Mike Pugh, as well later on in the presentation, Vice Principal Brittany Reed and Vice Principal Jordan Howlett from Langley Secondary, who are going to present this evening on our transition rates. A success for Langley community learners. Certainly our staffs should be commended for their hard work in schools. And this evening is an opportunity to highlight some of those successes. So I'll leave it to Deputy.
Thank you, Superintendent Gill, and it is my pleasure to present to you this evening the work we've been doing as a district K-12 around our transition goals. And obviously, all of you know how that is linked to our strategic plan, and which is connected to our framework for enhancing student learning, which trickles down into our schools through our action plans, the work that happens in our classrooms. And really, that's where the joy and excitement starts for this journey. And we've all been on journeys in our lives, and when we reflect back on those journeys, they all have experiences. And as we go through this work we do together, we create stories, and stories of hope and opportunity for each one of our students. As you think of the word journey and you think about your own experiences, thinking back to those opportunities you've had to go on a journey, what's at the heart of what we try and do is establish a purpose for this journey. And for us in Langley, we continue to connect and think through that lens of every child matters. And through that connection and that sense of purpose, we have principles that guide us along this journey. And these start within our classrooms, and the three principles that we've been focusing on as a district, and our teachers and support staff and principals and vice principals and district leaders have been working through and just reflecting on as we go through this journey of creating stories of success and hope, that we look through these two lenses. We recognize that learning involves patience and time. We recognize that learning is embedded in memory, history, and story. And we recognize that learning involves recognizing the consequences of one's actions. And of course, we know that those connect to the first people's principles of learning. And as we continue work alongside rights holders, we make sure that we honor those principles that we are utilizing in our classrooms, and we take them from those principles to action so that each one of our students can have success in their journey as learners. And through this journey, we see these stories that have been created, and what keeps us on this journey and keeps us focused on what we need to do is to ensure that we are on a road and pathway of equity and inclusion for each one of our students and our staff members throughout our district. We recognize that's the important piece that we continue to look through that lens of when we are creating a journey that impacts stories in a positive way, that we're doing it through the lens of equity, and that we provide resources and supports across the district that meet the individual need and the individual story that is presented in each one of our schools. Those are precious, and those are each one of those stories that we have to make sure that we do everything we possibly can to make that successful for that student in that moment in time, and looking through the lens of equity as we do it with an inclusive culture from our classrooms to our schools to our district. This journey has a specific focus for us, and the pathways we look through as we focus in and it becomes clearer for us is the vision we have around ensouling our schools. And this work goes back to the time that our Director of Instruction was Don Tomlinson, and the team that we had, and the focus was around the 3-block model. And at the heart of that, vision is creating compassionate and inclusive social and academic learning communities that provide access for every learner. If we sit for a minute and think about that, and we go back to that lens of that idea of equity and inclusion, the vision holds us to that task of making sure that we are providing those supports for students. And how do we do that? We do that through this 3-block model of creating opportunities for access points through social and emotional learning programs and implementation phases that we go through. So systems and structures at each one of our classrooms and school levels and across the district, and then the focus on instructional practice. This is an important focus for us to continue to work through as we see tonight. We share the statistics in terms of what we've been doing around this work and the stories that are encompassed around this work. This is where it begins in terms of the hard lifting, the heavy lifting. When you think about a vision on a roadway and the pathways you're going, it's taking theory to action. So theory is only as good as so far if it's in a book, but what are you actually going to do about it when it presents itself for an opportunity? And that's where the work of our staff and our schools is exceptional. You think of the word excellence, and you think about the staff we have in Langley in terms of their opportunity to take theory and turn it into action. The Ensouling Our Schools model, again, looks like it has a lot of work. It looks like it's deep in its learning, and we're thankful for the work that we have going on in our buildings for our staff to take it from theory to action. And this is the work in Langley that's so critical and important that we don't go on this journey alone. In order for us to create these stories of success, this has to be in partnership with rights holders and stakeholders, the work we do collectively together, looking back and moving forward together as one, presenting opportunities to engage in conversations that stakeholders and rights holders that work alongside us guide us and collaborate with us to ensure that we're doing the work that needs to happen. So the research can only go so far. The research can only go so far in a pathway, and it needs to be in a way that it's collaborative in the way we approach it in our classrooms. And that's where the heavy lifting starts, and that's where the work begins. And in Langley, we're fortunate enough to have the relationships and the work that we do collectively together to look at research and find the tension between unified and innovation. When you think about unified and innovation, how do they work in conjunction? Well, the research will provide the expertise in terms of this is what research is telling us is good for education. And the innovative piece is that the relationships we have in our schools provide for innovative opportunities to implement that research into our classrooms. And that takes time and patience in terms of the work we're doing, but it's a journey we're all on together, and it creates stories of success. And tonight I'm fortunate enough to work alongside Mike Pugh, our district principal of Aboriginal Education, as he's going to share the statistics behind the work we're doing. And then Brittany Reed and Jordan Hallett are going to share the story of LSS in terms of the work that's going on through the Insuling Our Schools model. Mr. Pugh.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Bradford. I won the short straw here today to talk about data. And I know how excited we all get about numbers. So if everyone just settle down here, we can get through this and talk about it. But the fact is that the numbers are just one piece. There's more to it. Each and every measurement tells a story. Each and every visual graph we create tells a story. And behind that are more and more stories of individual students. And from these stories, we'll see here, there is incredible success. We have reached all-time highs at all levels for all representatives of students. And that goes back to our initial work when the framework came out, and from the previous superintendent who said, and from the framework for enhancing student learning that says, your job is to focus on all students, but on the priority learners of Indigenous students, children and youth in care, and students with diverse abilities. And the question was asked, how are we going to do that? And we come to that through the words on this back wall. The idea of Natsamat, Latsamat, one heart, one mind, one focus. And we do that by working together. Yaistal, Skeka Yois. And through that work, we have seen incredible growth. Here, the results, 6-year grad rates. So from the ministry, we get results of 6-year grad rates. What that means is that it's looking at the cohort of students that started grade 8 6 years previous to that. So students are given 5 years to go 8 through 12 and plus 1 extra year of graduation. And last year we reached an all-time high of 95.1%. We had set for us a number of years ago that goal of reaching 93, and we knew it was going to be hard work. And we've surpassed that in the work we do. We see here just from first-time grad rates, 5 years, another all-time high of 92%. So this is students who are graduating at the end of their 5 years. We are seeing incredible success, but we can't simply sit back on those successes and say it's 95, it's 92. Those are numbers. Each of those numbers represents kids, students with a story, students who are also represented in that 5% who didn't graduate, students who are also represented in the 8% here who didn't graduate within 5 years. And that is part of the actual work we've done, is to start to decode who are those students. And those are the stories that will also be shared in the follow-up work the schools and district does to ensure that we keep connected to these students and keep them moving and keep them successful and ensure that we're supporting them as far as we can. We see for Indigenous learners a rate of 87%. This correlates to a result of less than 25 students not being successful. It is the result of cutting in half the number of students in 2 years that were not successful. Those are changing trajectories for students in their life. We see for students with diverse abilities, 85%. For children and youth in care, 63%. And we say, well, what's with this one's, the other ones are quite interesting. They're pretty standard, they're straight lines for the most part. And we are above that provincial average there in orange in all cases. However, for this one, you'll notice the fluctuation. And that is simply a result of incredibly small cohorts. Each of those graduating cohorts probably represents 10 to 15 students. And so that's why you see that wild fluctuation. And so the data is a great starting point for us. It is that piece that gives us that visual representation to see how we're doing, to know that we're doing a lot of things well, but there's still more work to do. But ultimately, it's about the story. And so I go to Brene Brown, who shares that maybe stories are just data with soul. So maybe we don't need to think about data as being a bad thing, but we can utilize that data to start to tell that story and that soul. And for that piece, I hand it over to Jordan and Brittany from Langley Secondary. Thanks, Mike.
You made those graphs sound pretty good. So from here, Brittany and I like to just tell you a little bit about, or kind of ground the data in what's been happening on the ground at LSS. So our overall grad rate last year was 97%. And when we look at the Indigenous students, that was 93% of students. So only 2 Indigenous students didn't graduate. Also at LSS, we do have an alternate program housed at the school. It's the district's focus program. It's for students who need more support with mental health and other things like that, and also might also be behind in their learning. So it's an alternate path for grad, and they had a success rate of 75% in that program as well. And of course, this data doesn't account for students coming in and out of our family of schools. But that's a problem that all schools face when we're looking at this data, because families are always moving. So for those LSS numbers, just to, again, kind of pull the story out, because the numbers only tell us one thing. So of the 7, 1 of them was an international student who's gone back to their home country. 4 of those students are Arabic speaking students from war-torn countries who are currently enrolled at LEC, and I believe that they are all currently in or are taking English 12 at the moment. So they just needed a little bit more time given their life circumstance. So I think we should be pretty proud about that. And then of the 2 Indigenous students, 1 is still working through their graduation, and the other kind of experienced a perfect storm of COVID, personal health, family health, mental illness, so on and so forth. And getting back in the building just wasn't going to happen for them at this point. So we're still hopeful that at some point they will. I know that individual, they're a brilliant person, and when they're in the place to be in school, they will be successful.
So coming back to the Ensoling Our Schools model, I started at LSS 2 years ago. And so before even going in there, knowing that these things were already happening, but they're continuing to happen. But it it lays the foundation for the things that we are doing in the school. The theory that we're bringing into action is intentional. And so we know the things that we are doing fit into the district model of Ensoling Our Schools. And so when we really unpack this, if we're looking at the systems and structures, these are the things that are informing all the decisions we make and the interventions that we decide to do. And so it starts with things, creating that culture of learning. And so we're looking at shifting instruction and shifting our assessment practices. And by doing so, we've sort of created more hope and efficacy amongst our students by things that you may not seem relevant, but growth mindset, or taking the negative comments out of report cards, or trying to move toward that. And in doing so, it all impacts student investment and that idea that they feel that they are capable. And so it's this interconnection of all the things that we're doing across the district and how it creates this culture of learning and having students more engaged and invested in what they're doing in class. The other piece is this idea that all children can learn and become educated, and it's really embracing that idea that all kids can learn at high levels, and it's the interventions and the strategies we use to try to get students to access their education. And so we kind of see it as under the umbrella of Every Child Matters. And there's more interventions that we have listed there that we use, but it's sort of like the RTI, or response to intervention, and the three-tiered tiers that we use to sort of collaboratively decide how do we get a diverse learner who's struggling in class to access their education. And so that involves SEAs, it involves counselors and youth care workers, teachers, resource teachers, admin. All these people, even our front office staff, are so interconnected with the kids and helping them move forward in their learning, which is pretty powerful and contributes to that culture of learning and that culture of belonging. And then in those processes, we're using the UDL, Universal Design for Learning, because some students might need to learn something in a different way. So really being intentional of how we use that along with prioritized learning standards. And that's really taking the curriculum and figuring out what are the essential skills that a student needs to show versus solely just the content. So it's been a hard shift. It's been difficult, but so important when you're looking at what is the essential thing this student needs to know so that they can be successful moving forward. And those transferable skills that transfer into everyday life, but also other curricular areas. And then the one thing we want to highlight as well is that like the First People's Principle of Learning and our focus and the reminder that learning involves patience and time. And so sometimes we need to kind of sit back and say, it's okay if it's taking a little bit longer, and pathways look different for other students. So those are like, this are students that have aged out and they're continuing on, but they just need a little more time. And then the other pillar of the Instilling Our Schools is the social emotional learning. And you can feel this in the school when you walk into LSS. I know my first day of walking in the school when I went to visit before I became a VP, you could feel the sense of belonging and the sense of community. But it's this idea that all students need to believe that they are significant, that they are capable, that they're good people, and they're powerful on the inside. And I think if we can get all students to believe those four things, then that's success right there. And so it's really being intentional about using the circle of courage. Jordan, I say it all the time to him, and he's like, circle of courage again.
There it is.
So this is Dr. Martin Brokenleg, and just his philosophy on working with youth at risk and just making sure that their circle of courage is whole. And when you have youth at risk, or any youth in general that might be struggling in certain areas, it's kind of identifying where that circle is broken, and then how do we work to kind of make the circle whole again. And so I'll pass it on to.
Yeah, so just thought we'd highlight just again quickly a few individual stories of LSS students, just to kind of again ground this in actual with some faces and one without, just to keep their anonymity. So yeah, thinking about what sort of stories I could share and go on for hours. I've been at LSS for 8.5 years now, 5 years as a teacher. This will be at the end of my 4th year as a VP. I've seen lots of great kids come through, seen lots of flexibility and staff and creativity to support kids. So could tell you stories about students coming from war-torn countries. So our Karen refugee community who's come through the school for years. and the success they found through the supports in the school and also finding success and belonging in athletics. Could go on for days about that. I could tell you about some of the work that's happening with some of our Aboriginal youth, and here's a group of our boys that recently I believe made drums. And just a side note for that one, at the consultation meetings for the enhancement agreement, one of the boys' parents, one of the boys who's up there, said, for us, success for him is him picking up a drum. And, taking up the culture and carrying that forward with them. Like, that's a measure of success for us. It's also recognizing through all these stories that success looks very different for different individuals. And the one I wanted to highlight, I wonder if Molina recognizes that student. Yes, he does. I can tell by his smile. So this particular student, so this was actually, these photos are from our grad walk last year. They joined the family of schools, our family of schools in kindergarten, and went all the way through. And what I'll tell you about their experiences at LSS would be very similar to their experiences at their previous schools, where there is very intentional connections made for that student with all the different supports in the building, because that's what they needed. They were someone that from an early age had to take lots of responsibilities at home, and that took a toll on them. And they came through Stafford as well with success. They kept coming back. It was a credit to their resiliency. And by the time they came to us, they decided they wanted to be in our AVID program. So we have lots of programs at LSS. The AVID program is for students that decide early on that they want to go to post-secondary. So it's about study skills and getting scholarships and employable skills and all that sort of stuff. And she wanted that. And the staff there recognized that the AVID program was perfect for her because of the sense of community that it builds and the belonging, because that class actually stays together for 4 years with the same teacher, and recognizing that that would have been an important factor in getting them across the stage in 4 years. It was a bumpy road the whole way through, all the way through their career at LSS. They ended up in hospital in grade 11. And at that point, things were looking kind of dire for their graduation and how to get there, behind in classes, attendance issues because of the responsibilities at home, so on and so forth. And so we did what we always did, is we pulled the team together and came up with a plan to hold the kid up basically until they were able to keep walking towards their graduation. By the time the student got to grad, they had easily, and I don't exaggerate when I say 20 strong connections with adults in the building, which was youth care worker, counselors, resource staff, SEAs, and so on. And the pictures you're looking at, so again, we take, on the day of our graduation, we take our kids through our family of schools. They walk the halls, the kids are lined the halls and cheer them on. The first photo is her hugging a staff member at HC Stafford. And what you can't see in that photo is the pool of tears on the floor, because it's just such a great moment for them. And it kind of just showed how it took the whole family to get her there. And then the second photo, their younger sibling is at another school in the district because of everything that had gone in their life. They hadn't seen much of them in the last few years. And when she came around one of the corners, I guess he was in grade 5, he's standing there holding a gift for her. And so tears everywhere and everyone's a hot mess. And it's unfortunate I can't show you the photos because she's smiling ear to ear with, just makeup streaming down her face, which was great. So yeah, so just to sum this up, like I feel really fortunate that I've worked so long at a place that has stories like this. And it's not just one story every year. There's usually a dozen of them like this. So, yeah, thank you.
Anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much. Trustees, have any questions? Trustee Wilson?
One more time. Oh, perfect. I knew it would work eventually. Wow, great presentation. All of you love the stories. So thank you for bringing that, because that is our connection. I really liked what you had to say about the UDLs and demonstrating the skills in different ways, and that sometimes can be a hard shift. And I think it's important that we recognize that, like, you know, as educators or as anybody in whatever role they do, you sometimes change is hard, but it's good to see that we talk about that and that we progress. And so I was happy to hear about that. Also, your social emotional learning was very powerful. I loved the part about all students need to believe they're powerful on the inside. That was great. I'm glad you added that in there. But my main question, I guess, is more to do with Mike Pugh's part, the numbers. Here we go. So I just did a quick search on the internet, and it says here the latest census data from 2021 shows Indigenous children made up nearly 54% of those under the age of 14 in foster care, despite representing just 7.7% of children in that age group, which is a disparity that has been described as a humanitarian crisis. So I see when I look at the charts that you had and that we had in our package, that I feel so sad when I see our children in care rates of the 6-year completion rates. So I guess what I want to know is when we look at our Indigenous numbers and we look at our children in care numbers, are we separating out the Indigenous children in care when we see that?
But there we go, hit that button. Yeah, we do. We have a district vice principal of children in care, Aya Hayer, who works there, and we work collaboratively together. We work collaboratively with the team in instructional services and in learning sports services to focus on those students with different intersectionalities, whether it be Indigenous students with diverse abilities, Indigenous students who are children and youth in care, or all three aspects. Without a doubt, the current system, I think it's the safest way to explain it is the newest version of residential school, and it is a problem across this country. It is a continuation of the cultural genocide, and it is concerning because, yeah, it's an overrepresented, I think I would say, within our province and within our district. When I was in that role, and then recently in kind of conversation with Aya, our numbers will fluctuate probably between 55 to 65% of those students in care coming from Indigenous backgrounds and self-identifying as Indigenous. Across the country, it will be higher in a number of other provinces, and it is certainly a very concerning situation. So that is certainly, I think, one of the big focuses, and it comes from the framework for enhancing student learning, is that piece around identifying who those priority learners are, knowing their stories, as Jordan and Brittany so eloquently shared, and then finding those supports where needed. And I mean, I can speak for the work that, yes, we're doing at the district level, but the incredible work that's being done at the school level to support students in care, Indigenous and non-Indigenous.
Thank you. Any other trustees? No? Okay. Seeing no other speakers, can I please have a motion that the Board of Education receives the report on the district transitions goal for information as presented? Moved by trustee Ward, seconded by trustee Wright. Okay. And all in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, moving on to local education agreement. I'll pass it over to Superintendent Gill.
Thank you, Chair. Ashdown, this evening, we're not going to let District Principal Pugh escape so quickly. We're going to ask him to please help support just a little bit more background information on the local education agreement that we have with Kwantlen. In addition to that, he's going to give us a little bit of background with the enhancement agreement as well, the work that's been going on this year already around community consultation. So I'll leave it to, I guess, Assistant Superintendent Moino and District Principal Pugh.
Thank you, Superintendent Gill. There it is. As we frame tonight's conversation and our presentation, I go back to two documents to kind of frame the work and the learning for tonight. And that first one being from FNESC, the First Nations Education Steering Committee, the First Peoples Principles of Learning. So that learning tonight is in the presentation is focused on relation, connectedness, reciprocal relationships. It recognizes the role of Indigenous knowledge. It involves patience and time. And that from the BCTF's Aboriginal Ways of Knowing and Being, which is a very connected document, very similar document that talks about learning is connected to land, culture, and spirit. We, the two-legged, four-legged, finned, and feathered plants and rocks are all related. And we must always practice reciprocity through the acts of giving and receiving. And learning involves developing relationships, respecting distinct cultures, and honoring the perspectives of others in the community. And it is with that in mind that I recognize I stood before this, well, not this board, but I stood before the board a year ago on this date after having heard Chief Willie Sellers from Williams Lake First Nation release the information of the initial search at the residential school in Williams Lake, and the discovery of up to 97 unmarked graves. And it is with a heavy heart that I send my thoughts and my prayers out to the family tomorrow in Williams Lake as they are set to announce the second phase of results. And so it's important, while this takes a little bit of a tangent from the presentation, it's important that we recognize that effect of colonialism, the results of the residential schools, these students are still being found. This will be the third nation this month that will be releasing results. The 215 was not the end. It was simply a beginning to an incredible tragedy and a dark history. And so I encourage everyone tomorrow to take that moment to reflect and to think about how we move forward, and to send your thoughts to Williams Lake as they're a community who will be struggling. And for the staff in the Aboriginal program tomorrow, it will be another difficult day as more data is released, as more unmarked graves are brought to light. And that the sense of connectedness and relationship is so key. And so we work together tomorrow around this, but I did want to highlight that for everybody to make sure you were aware. The journey through a local education agreement that I'm going to talk about, it starts with this document, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And this was a document that was discussed for many, many years at the United Nations. And eventually, when it came to be, it was voted in almost unanimously. There were 11 countries that abstained from the vote, and there were 4 countries that voted against it. And I will have to stand here in front of everybody and say, when I presented to the principals, I actually wrongly included one country, so I will correct that this evening. The 4 countries who spoke out against the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People were the United States of America, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. And this document highlights that Indigenous peoples from around the world have the right to self-determination, have the right to govern, and have a say over how they control numerous things, from education to healthcare to financial deals, and the expectation of a governance to governance type model. So rather than being excluded from conversations with municipal, provincial, federal governments, that they are included as a government level conversation and not just a partner group. And so over the years, there are a number of different declarations within this, a number that highlight the importance of that control of education and that right to have a say in how Indigenous students are educated. And then in 2019, the provincial government became the first province in Canada to accept the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and created the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. Because as governments, we're always fond of acronyms, so we went from UNDRIP to DRIPA. And so DRIPA as part of it, has an action plan. There are a number of other principles that are guiding in that, but there is an action plan. And within that action plan, it does talk about how Indigenous peoples within British Columbia have the right to control and conversations around and jurisdiction over education. And we have seen some nations already exert that right and take control of jurisdiction for education in their communities. At the same time, there was the BC Tripartite Education Agreement, which we will call BCT. And that agreement was done between the federal government, the provincial government, and FNESC on behalf of First Nations students. And this is a supporting document for First Nation students only. So this does not involve supports for Métis or Inuit students. This is only for First Nation students and really targeted specifically First Nation students on reserve. It's actually, to tell a quick aside, a short read a class, the grade 5s at the school are currently investigating around financing for First Nation schools on reserve and those off reserve and the differences, and then discussing how those differences in funding would play out into differences in life trajectory. And one of the big things that I was able to share with them from this agreement is that this agreement laid out that no longer will we see disparity in funding for First Nation students on reserve. That First Nation students on reserve would be funded in exactly the same way as First Nation students who attend public school and as all other students who attend public school. If you've read the book Valley of the Bird Tail that highlights education in Manitoba, you know that one of the pieces to it is that there's a discrepancy year to year of about $3,500 in the funding that they highlighted. And that funding gap results in less ability to provide quality education on reserve. But it also starts to take away money from the local First Nation when they have to pay that gap when they send their students to public school after grade 9. That has a massive effect on First Nation students on reserve. And so BC became the first province to eliminate that. It lays out processes on a joint nominal roll process for identifying the students who are on reserve and where that funding comes from. It discusses ways that we can provide funding for transportation and supports for getting students on reserve to and from school. It highlights the need and the requirement to have a yearly Indigenous focused Pro-D Day that is focused on ensuring that we increase achievement for Indigenous learners and that we increase worldviews and perspectives within the classroom. And one of the last mechanisms that it utilized within there is the increased importance and focus on local education agreements. And so this was signed in January of 2019. And these 3 documents help to guide the process around the local education agreement. But I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Molino, who will share something that was going on at the joint time as well.
Thank you, District Principal Pugh. So you've heard then through the three documents, UNDRIPA and the BC Tripartite Education Agreement, that all bring us to the local education agreement with Kwantlen. But there was one more piece, a Langley context to this as well. And that was from, I guess, starting approximately 2017, the district started to look at a process of how do we look at middle school programming across the district. And specifically, when it came to the Aldergrove DW Pompey secondary consultation, there was then from September to December, a very focused consultation that looked at middle school programming. But within that, the trustees, I think, would agree that there were more topics that came to the forefront besides just that middle school conversation. So from that, then 5 motions emerged, with the first being dedicated to support for students from the local land-based nations. So in terms of a bit of a history lesson, and I'm not going to go through all the details, but I will focus in on the fact that in the Aldergrove and Poppy regions, the conversation started as far back as January 2017. And it wasn't then until June 2019 that trustees approved a consultation process between Aldergrove and DW Poppy again to explore options in terms of middle school programming. But as you'll again see with the first motion, the motions or the topics in terms of that consultation certainly went beyond just middle school programming. So again, September to December was the actual consultation. And finally, in December 2019, the board approved the 5 motions to be carried out in the regions. The first motion then very much connected to the local education agreement with which is being discussed today. So the actual motion put forward was that the Board of Education refers to Yayastol using the BC Tripartite Education Agreement and local education agreements as frameworks to address their desire for student flexibility and priority in the schools they choose to attend, including both neighborhood and choice programs. And so very much with local education agreements, they are done at the behest, at the start, by each of the land-based nations. And so the first land-based nation to come forward and start those conversations then was Kwantlen. So with that,
Back to me. And so we talked at the beginning and in other presentations about learning takes patience and time. And this was an agreement that took patience and time to work our way through. In fact, I shared in a previous presentation that when we started this process, it was days away from being signed when I took this role as district principal. That was in August of 2017. We signed it last year. So learning takes patience and time. And the rationale for that, somebody would tell you it's another reason, but I'm not going to let him bother me right now. The rationale for that is there were a number of other things that came to be, one of which was the BC Tripartite Education Agreement that actually laid out a provincial framework. And so we took that time to say, we're not going to rush this process. We're not going to rush to get it done. Instead, we're going to work together, that idea of Yayastol, under the guiding that one heart, one mind for students to make sure that we give them the best possible options. And so we went back to the table and we worked together and we included many aspects of the new provincial framework into our guiding document. And so the document lays out the purpose of it. It's to confirm that commitment. We, the Board of Education and the staff of the district, are committed to working with Kwantlen in collaboration and through consultation to build a positive, effective, and collaborative relationship that is focused on improving Kwantlen student educational outcomes and to assist Kwantlen students to achieve their full potential with all necessary supports identified and implemented to achieve high levels of Kwantlen student success. So once again, this is Kwantlen being able to exert their inherent right to control education. It sets out the roles and responsibilities of the parties involved. It ensures that there's a clear, meaningful role for parents, caregivers, and legal guardians in that education and their connection to also working as partners with the board and with the governance of the nation. And finally, it serves as a core shared accountability mechanism. This is how we hold each other accountable to ensure student success. When we are following Yayastol, working together, that we are reaching that core understanding and support for students. It focuses around these shared values and commitments. That we will ensure that the journey of educating Kwantlen students within a trusting, respectful relationship between Kwantlen and the board by working together, sharing responsibilities, building understanding, cooperation, advocacy, accountability, and honoring the many gifts. We have a duty to follow this piece. That we ensure the promotion of positive personal and cultural identity of Kwantlen students defined in BC's K-12 curriculum. And that's from the core competency work within there. That we develop and deliver the development and delivery of education programs and services that promote awareness of Kwantlen language, history, culture, traditions, teachings, and heritage consistent with provincial law and other regulations through the BC kindergarten to grade 12 curriculum. students, especially Kwantlen students, have the right to learn about the nations that are here. And yes, finding resources at times can be more difficult, and it can involve conversations and the development and the work together of that program. But we can learn about who is from here and whose land we are on. And it's important that we honor that work. And that we have open and effective communication between Kwantlen and the board that benefits Kwantlen student support, service, and success. And so it highlights that Lotsamot Education Committee. And that is the name given to the committee that is defined in the agreement as made up of representatives from Kwantlen, the education team, the Aboriginal program leadership team, any Aboriginal program staff who are working with students from Kwantlen, as well as any parents or anybody else from Kwantlen that we believe should be there to be part of it. And these team within there is guiding mechanisms for us to meet and to talk regularly and what the expectations are for that education committee. It really has these, sorry, it says purpose, but these are really principles. That Kwantlen, the principles that we follow is that belief that Kwantlen has a central role in Kwantlen students' education. That Kwantlen students have the ability to access a quality education. That we as a district in partnership with Kwantlen First Nation will work towards reconciliation and collaboration in education. That Kwantlen student and parental caregivers or legal guardians are provided with the opportunity of choice around schools. That Kwantlen student safety is prioritized. When we met with the elders and with the youth, what we heard were often not stories of, here's my experience within the school, here's my experience with the curriculum, but it was, here's my experience where I felt unsafe as I had to try to get to school, as I had to work my way home, as I had to navigate the hallways in between classes. Many of the elders spoke not about having issues within the classroom and the learning, but it was that safety piece. And so for them, with their children and their grandchildren now attending schools, safety is of an utmost concern and priority, and we need to make sure we honor that at all times. And we honor that finally through these guiding principles. That is the house post that has been gifted to us for now by Kwantlen First Nation that represents its meaning being the protector of all children. It is a reminder of the work we do. And as I said, we do that work continually under the guise of that one heart, one mind. In Halkamelam, Lotsamot. In Hunkaminam, the downriver dialect, Notsamot. How do we work together as a group to come to that understanding? But also, how do you individually connect your heart and your mind together around this purpose? And of course, we do that through working together. Halkamelam language, Skekoyois. Hunkaminam language, the downriver, Yayasto. That's how we do that together. We come to that understanding through working together, that collaborative partnership piece. And so that's the governing document. And so it's important to understand the difference here. That was a local education agreement that is a governance document that guides the relationship between the district and the Board of Education and the leadership and the community of one other nation. But we do have, and we're continuing to work on another document, the Aboriginal Education Enhancement Agreement. And this document guides the work we do for all Indigenous students in the district. And you'll notice there that with the goals, how they line up to those guiding principles. The goals as they stand right now are about respectful partnerships with trust. And that we work together in the second goal to create strength-based, personalized, student-centered learning that respects Aboriginal history, cultural values, and most importantly, nurtures a sense of belonging for all Aboriginal students. And we talk about these other guiding documents we have. The strategic plan, the framework for enhancing student learning, our guidance for assessment, ensoling our schools, the balanced literacy guides, the teaching and learning framework. All of these documents are grounded in those two goals of working together to create that sense of belonging and doing so through respectful, trusting partnerships. And it's important to understand that that enhancement agreement does not sit separately. It does not sit on its own, but it is the work that we all do every day in the schools as we work through these other documents, as Brittany and Jordan highlighted, the work of ensoling our schools within LSS. Infused within that is the enhancement agreement at all times. And so many of you were part of community consultations, and we're continuing to gather feedback through online surveys that have gone out to families. But the next steps for us is our document was due to be renewed in June of 2020. And for obvious reasons, it was postponed until we could come together as a community and have these consultations and these conversations about what to do next. And so we are now in the process of compiling all that feedback. We will establish a writing committee through YIASTAL, and the members from YIASTAL can come and we can work together to create that new enhancement agreement. And I have no idea what that new enhancement agreement will look like. It could be the same goals with new indicators. It could be new goals. It could just be a focusing of the document, or it could be blowing it up and starting something new. But our intention is to have it ready to go, hopefully for the start of the school year, where we can then begin to infuse it into the day-to-day work in schools. And so I just want to go back to those guiding principles, because I've talked about them a lot in all of my presentations tonight. That is the work we do. We work together around that one heart, one mind. What are we doing so that every child matters? And all of these documents lead to that. So once again, it's about working together collaboratively through proper consultation, levels of government to levels of government, around every child matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do any trustees have any questions? No? Okay. All right. Can I please have a motion that the Board of Education receives the report on the local education agreement for information as presented? Trustee Dickinson, seconded by Trustee Wilson. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on next to Secretary Treasurer's reports. Over to you, Secretary Treasurer Isley.
Thank you, Chair. Tonight, wanted to provide an update to the public and to the trustees on some of the capital projects that are in process within the district currently. Wanted to start off with the original capital project funding agreement that were signed by the district and the ministry. The four that we have now are Southwest Yorkson, which was what it was called until it was named Donna Gabriel Elementary. Short Reed Seismic, Vanguard Seismic, and newly added Peter Ewart Seismic and Expansion Project. These are the original budgets that were signed at the time of the agreements with the ministry, and you can see what the total approved funding was. So for Southwest Yorkson or Donna Gabriel, at the time of the signing, we were approved to spend up to $8.8 million. There was a maximum potential of $32 million available to be spent. For that project and all subsequent projects, the ministry had changed the way they do the budget approvals for capital projects. They only released to the districts the amount of funding that can be quantified at a certain given point in time. So that's why you can see the smaller amount for all the projects at the approval stage. And then as the projects develop, they go through different processes where costs are verified and validated throughout the process, and then we do an application process to the ministry to get money, which what they call below the line, which is the reserves. And I'll speak to each one of the projects separately as we go through them. Can also see that for Donna Gabriel or Southwest Yorkson, the district had to contribute $3.5 million towards that project. And for the Peter Ewart seismic and expansion, they've asked for a contribution of $1 million. Pure seismic projects, they don't ask for contributions from districts. So for Donna Gabriel Robbins, as we went through the process, we requested $8.8 million from the reserve, which was done at the tender stage, which was approved. So that total funding envelope became $27.6 million, and the reserve was left at $4.5 million. And we won't be needing to use that reserve. We will be able to complete that project within the funding envelope of the $27.6 million. Currently for Southwest Yorkson or Donna Gabriel, substantial completion was granted in December of 21. And we just completed this last December the one-year walkthrough with the construction company. There were 5 deficiencies that were identified, and those are being sorted out with the contractor after hours. One other thing that has happened was an ongoing issue with a roof leak in that building, which they originally tried to resolve using caulking and sealing. With the snow and the cold, that did not hold up, so they are in the process now of working through a structural solution, which they feel will solve that issue going forward. For those that haven't seen it, that's what Southwest Yorkson, Donna Gabriel Elementary looks like upon opening from the 2 sides. And then just a quick example of some of the interior space of a couple of classrooms and spaces within that school. For those that haven't seen it, it is a beautiful facility and is busting with kids, and looking forward to adding to the next school up on the Willoughby Slope. Short read is a seismic project. It's a fairly sizable one. As we got through the tender process, needed just under $2.6 million, which the ministry approved, which left $1 million left in the reserves. That one is proceeding well and will also be able to be completed within the $7.9 million that the ministry has currently approved for us. Phase 1 through 5 are all complete. It was a 6-phase project. They're just doing now the steel work on the last phase, and they've already started removing some of the scaffolding and removing portables from that site, and are scheduled to start the final cleanup in a couple weeks of February 1st, with anticipation of completing that in the middle of February. A couple pictures of what that looks like with, you can see on the left the covered area, and then you can see what's going on underneath the covered area on the right. So that's the last phase that's currently being done at that school. Vanguard, when we went to tender, needed $1.3 million added to the budget for a total of 3.3. It's a smaller project. And that one also will be done within the $3.3 million approved budget by the ministry. This project is unfortunately a month behind. It took a little longer going through that approval process, and then unfortunately the timing of that lovely snow dumping that we received did cause us a little bit of delays. They're working on some drywalling and some paint and exterior cladding. And but other than that, that one is working smoothly as well. This is what it looks like a little while ago. That's the addition on the back of the school, and you can see they're inside. They're already working with the drywall and even have coats of paint starting to go up. So that one is starting to progress, and mostly will be completed by May of this year. A new one, Peter Ewart, a seismic and an expansion project, was announced by the ministry May of 2022. This is a combination project to do the seismic work that is needed, but also to expand the capacity of that school from 625 students to 900 students. Since it is an expansion, the ministry did ask for a contribution of $1 million towards that project. All 5 blocks are being worked on through this project. And it is scheduled to start construction in May of this year, with completion of October 2024. As you may have noticed, some portables have arrived on site. 2 of those were from Short Read. 2 of them are coming as purchases as part of this project. And then there will be another 2 arriving in spring break, and the last 2 will be arriving in the summer for the summer. The drawings are proceeding well. They're about 75%, and we anticipate them to be at the 95% for the end of the 31st, which is when the construction management company Unitech would then start working on the project costing and working with the ministry on that. And we would have to see at that point whether or not we needed to move some funds from the reserves to the approved budget. With the hope that in early April, Unitech will start getting on site with starting to build and work in May of this year. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any trustees have any questions? Vice Chair Dickinson?
Yeah, just a question about the portables. As the portables are coming on site, are you moving classrooms out into them? Or is it just prepping?
The portables are just getting there to be put on site for when the work starts, and then it'll be swing space as they do parts of the project throughout the school. They'll be moving various classes out throughout the entirety of the project.
And that's starting this, like, they'll be starting this year?
They probably won't be using those until probably the fall. I don't think they'll be getting into much with them only starting in May. Getting too far into it in June to be able to have to use all 8 portables. That's why we felt we could do this. Unfortunately, getting hold of portables right now is a bit of a challenge. So we were able to move the ones from Short Read, which they're kind of deemed now seismic portables by the ministry, and expect us to move them. We did leave 2 at Short Read due to the growth in that area and had to backfill under that project. But the team feels that the less portables at front we can do because the heavy work will start summer and onwards.
And just to follow up to that question, is there additional costs? I'm just thinking about having to bring out the heavy equipment and cranes, et cetera, to move these portables. Is it financially a smart decision to be moving them at separate times and not just waiting to the summer and moving them all at once and having the crane and the operator there at one time?
They needed to get moving on the ones from Short Read and to get them on site, a couple of them, because they probably will use a little bit of that swing space. Would it have been a little more efficient? Potentially, but the issue is that some of them are coming available and we'd be paying for storage and moving them anyways. A lot of this is being dictated by supply chain on portables.
Thank you.
Trustee Newfeld?
Yeah, so you say you're expanding to 900 seats from 625, is that the number? Is that number gonna be from portables, or is that in block 5 with the expansion or the creation of classrooms from the library, the unused library?
Yes, it's creation of space within the building. With it being a secondary, there are spaces that are oversized, science labs and those kind of things, the library, all those things are going to be right sized to get the additional capacity.
Trustee Wilson?
Yeah, I have a question about the roof at Donna Gabriel Robbins. It just seems like with a new build, I'm perplexed about why the leak. Do we know what happened with why it originally occurred, or?
That is still a subject of debate amongst the 3 parties as to why it's happening, but they do feel they have a solution for it going forward. So we will have to see once they implement that solution. We're hopeful that they'll be able to do it. They're going to change the grade of the slope. The problem is there's a section of roof that's too flat. So they're going to increase the slope in that area, which they feel will get the runoff and going in the right direction.
Oh, I was looking at you. Yeah. when it is leaking, is it disrupting like a classroom, or are people moving, or are we able to manage around it?
The last one with the amount of snow did do some damage in a classroom. So that's been cleaned up, but until that, it hasn't impacted classrooms. They've been able to manage around it.
Trustee Fox?
Madam Chair, over the years, we've seen designs of schools somewhat replicated. I think of Gordon Greenwood and Betty Gilbert, James Hill, relatively the same footprint. We've seen that at secondary with Poppy, Brookswood, Mountain, the original Mountain, now Peter York. The design of Donna Gabriel Elementary, is that going to be kind of a core footprint for other new schools that will be coming in the Willoughby areas to save from an economic perspective, saving money in terms of architecture and so on, or is that made for that particular site because of the slope, et cetera, et cetera? Are we looking to that, or is it all open bid?
We always look to do a modified repeat where we can, because it cuts down on the time to be able to get the school up and running. For the design of Donna Gabriel, it would be reused if there was another layout that was that fit. It was more of a narrow site, so that necessitated the layout of that school. If we had another school site that was similar to that, then we would look at doing a modified repeat.
One of the advantages of doing that is design flaws that you experience them in the initial building site. They can be remedied at architectural stage, so they aren't repeated. That's
So like Northeast Latimer is on a similar type size or shape, I should say, site, and so the plan would be to do Donna Gabriel, but they're already talking about a different roof design in that area.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, seeing no other questions, can I please have a mover that the Board of Education receives the report on capital projects 2022-2023 for information as presented? Moved by Trustee Rye, seconded by Trustee Ward. Any speakers on the motion? Oh, all right, all in favor? Opposed? Sorry, I'm all in favor. I didn't raise my hand. Carried unanimously. All right, thank you. Okay, moving on next to annual review of trustee remuneration. Back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Per Board Policy 7, Section 11, it dictates that annually trustee remuneration will be determined by the board. What is in policy is that the proposal will be brought forward to the trustees based on the Canadian Consumer Price Index. So in your package, you'll see the information that staff have put together based on the 12-month change in the Consumer Price Index as of December 2022 for the preceding 12 months, which was 6.3%. There's a link there for anyone that wants to look at where that information came from. And also it lists the amounts that the various trustee positions, the trustee, the vice chair, and the chair would be increased to based on that 6.3%. And there's a motion in the package for trustees' consideration.
Thank you. Do any trustees have any questions? No. Okay. So, my apologies. Comment, or do you want on the motion? Okay, go ahead. Well, we haven't put the motion on the floor yet, so it's just more for questions for clarification. No, okay. Okay, so can I have a mover then, please? That the Board of Education receives, I'm going backwards here, that the Board of Education approves the increase of 6.3% effective January 1st, 2023, based on the 12-month change in Canada Consumer Price Index, CPI, in accordance with Board Policy 7, Board Operations, Section 11, and to update the salaries in Policy 7 or board operation, section 11.1 with the new salaries. Do I have a mover? Moved by trustee Ward. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Newfeld seconded. Okay, any discussion on the motion? Trustee Ward.
There we go. Feedback. Maybe I might steal your thunder, or maybe you might improve upon what I was going to say. But this is something that came to the previous board, and of course, it's always you're reticent to vote a raise for yourself. So I've always seen politicians do this. I'd rather just address the issue, put it on the table. That it's always kind of a weird thing, and for politicians to do it. So I accept that it's weird, and for that reason, the previous board put in policy to tie it to the consumer price index. So to kind of make it so it's not really us trying to crank up our salaries in such a fashion, but just really to link it in with inflation. So that was my explanatory attempt.
Trustee Ward, trustee Wilson.
Okay, yeah, I feel similar to trustee Ward. It's really a hard thing to vote yourself a raise, and with the previous boards, it was always done at the end of your 4 years. So you were voting on a raise for the next board, and you didn't know how the election would play out, so it made it easier because you weren't voting yourself a raise. The problem with that system was that at the end of the 4 years, there would have to be a committee struck and all sorts of people to look at comparable districts and all sorts of things, and you'd end up with this 15 or 20% or whatever it would be, this huge raise because you hadn't done anything for the 4 years and you had to compete with other districts. And so that felt not great as well because it was this big amount of money. So that's basically why it, the board decided to tie it to this annually. And at that time, I believe when I tried to look back, I mean, the CPI was never this high, and so it seemed justifiable. And now when I look at it though, and I look at what our public sector wage mandate was, I think for year one it was like 2.3 or something, or 3.2. So I just feel like the 6.3 does seem like a really large increase. And yeah, like I said, this isn't easy, so I just want people to know that.
Thank you, trustee Wilson. Any other further comments or on the motion? All right. The question is on the motion that the Board of Education approves the increase of 6.3% effective January 1st, 2023, based on the 12-month change in Canada Consumer Price Index, CPI, in accordance with Board Policy 7, Board Operations, Section 11, and to update the salaries in Policy 7, Board Operations, Section 11.1 with the new salaries. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Opposed? Trustee Wilson opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, moving along to Policy Committee. And I'm going to pass this over to Trustee Fox to give the update, as Chair I was not able to make the last meeting.
Thank you, Chair Wilson, Chair Ashdown. So the first item on the agenda is Policy 8, board committees. So I'll read the motion out if I could. That the Board of Education serves notice of motion to the district's education community and its educational partner groups that intends to adopt the revisions to policy number 8 board committees at the April 2nd, 2023 regular board meeting. Can I speak to that?
Of course, yes.
Okay. Firstly, this is a notice of motion. And secondly, the change that has been made is that, and I'll quote it, I'll quote the paragraph, all committees shall report to the board at the board meeting following each committee meeting. And then the following has been added. and all standing committees agendas will be posted on the district website 24 hours prior to the standing committee meetings. Those are the words that have been added.
Thank you, trustee Fox. So we have a motion on the table. So do I have a seconder? Oh, yeah, sorry.
Believe that the date of the meeting should be April 25th, not April 2nd. Sorry, just noticed that.
Thank you, good catch. So do I have a seconder, please? Trustee, oh, yes, sorry, yes, actually, as amended, trustee Wilson. All right, any questions or any on the motion on the table? No. All right, well, we will vote on the recommendation that the Board of Education serves notice of motion to the district's education community and its education partner groups that it intends to adopt the revisions to policy number 8 board committees at the April 25th, 2023 regular board meeting. Can I have hands all in favor? Favor? Any opposed? Favor. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, next.
Education community and its education partner groups that it intends to adopt the revisions to policy number 18, student transportation, at the April 25th, 2023 regular board meeting. I so move.
Thank you, trustee Fox. Do I have a seconder? Trustee, or sorry, Vice Chair Dickinson. And would you like to speak to the motion?
Speak to the motion.
Your mic on, trustee Fox. It's okay.
Okay, I'll say that again. The policy committee has met, and the discussion included under number 1, ridership privileges for registered students. 1.1, first priority will be granted to the following students, and the old 1.1.3 and 1.1.4 were consolidated in a new 1.1.3, which reads, students who have been approved for complex resource support or with physical disabilities who are unable to navigate conventional public or school transportation. So that falls under 1.1, first priority.
Thank you. Any other speakers to the motion on the table? Trustee Wilson?
I feel like I've reviewed this policy so many times for so many different issues that it's like I've been on a 5-year journey with this policy. I had the opportunity to sit in on the policy committee meeting where the committee looked at the proposal of removing the words physical from the physical disabilities and including all students with disabilities. And I felt like the committee had a thoughtful discussion on the information that staff provided regarding the change and the estimated 4,000 extra students that could potentially qualify for busing and the impact to the budget. I know how difficult those decisions are. So now we're back at looking at these proposed changes that were intended to clarify and streamline the policy. But after reviewing the changes, I feel that the language now excludes students with physical disabilities that are able to navigate the bus, but aren't physically able to walk to school. But I don't think it's right for me to just continually refer this policy back to the committee because obviously that undermines the committee. So I will just let the board go ahead and vote on this policy. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Wilson. Any other speakers to the motion? Okay, seeing none. Can I please have sorry, the question is on the motion Sorry, just one second. Let me get into the right spot here. The question is on the motion that the Board of Education serves notice of motion to the district's education community and its education partner groups that it intends to adopt the revisions to policy number 18, student transportation, at the April 2nd, 2023 regular board meeting. Did I say it wrong? Oh, thank you. That date is incorrect on there as well. So my apologies. So I'll read that again, that the Board of Education serves notice of motion to the district's education community and its education partner groups that it intends to adopt the revisions to policy number 18, student transportation, at the April 25th, 2023 regular board meeting. Do I have all show of hands in favor? Yep, you moved it, and it was seconded by Trustee Wilson. I believe, was it not? No, is it not? Oh, my apologies. Okay, and can I have a show of hands? Those in favor? Opposed? 2 opposed. Trustee Wilson and Trustee Rye opposed. The motion is carried. Thank you. Great. We are moving on to new business. We didn't have any new business added at the beginning of the meeting. I don't believe there is any. So we'll move along to trustee comments. So why don't we start down with Trustee Wilson? Would you like to start? If you have anything would you like to say?
In the interest of saving time, because I know we've all been here for a long time, I just want to thank everybody for coming and all of our partner groups and students and families out in the district for everything you do all the time. I know things seem really heavy right now for a lot of people, and I just want you to keep on going on. And if I could make Family Day, Family Week, I would, but I can't. So take care and have a great night.
You knew, Phil.
Happy birthday to Holly Dickinson, and I think it's your birthday tomorrow. So happy birthday to you.
Vice Chair Dickinson.
No, I don't have anything to say. Just thank you to everybody that came out and did presentations tonight. It was fabulous. So happy with what's happening at LSS. That was a great story. So
Thank you. Trustee Wright.
I don't have anything to add either. Thank you for coming out, and I have to agree with Holly. The LSF presentation was awesome and very touching. Good on them for doing such great work.
Trustee Ward.
Very good. Just thanks for everyone who is tuning in, and I can't just echo Trustee Wilson's comments. Thanks.
It's an evening of thank yous. Thank you to our partner groups for all the work you do, and your members and our senior staff. And I'm going to a BCPC conference, and I have to tell you that Secretary Treasurer Esley is going to be under close scrutiny. I've got to babysit him and Deputy Superintendent Bradford. So we're going to be well taken care of. Langley, the well represented for the next two days, Thursday, Friday at BCPC. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Fox. I don't have much to say other than just thank you to everybody for coming this evening. And my apologies, I forgot some very important people at the beginning. I almost forgot to welcome you as well. And I also forgot to introduce, because I did not see her at the back, former trustee Suzanne Perot. So welcome. And happy birthday to Vice Chair Dickinson. So everybody have a great night. And so I guess we need to actually make a motion to adjourn. Oh, sorry. Actually, we have to do question period first. I just turned myself off here. Okay, so question period is provided at board meetings. The purpose is to ensure that those present in the audience have an opportunity to obtain clarification concerning business conducted during that meeting. Priority will be given to responding to one question per person before considering further questions from any individual. The following will help the public develop questions or question period at a board meeting that is keeping with the goal of a respectful and focused meeting. Questions need to be directed to the chair and not to staff, need to be related directly to the topic on the agenda, need to be succinct, focused, and not be a statement, may not be asked that are related to personnel or directed at an individual trustee, may not be asked that are related to contract negotiations, and the questioner shall provide their name so that it can be reflected in the minutes. All of the above are directions provided for in Board Policy Number 7, Board Operations. The chair may answer, may defer to staff, or indicate a question may not be in keeping with the above guidelines. The board appreciates the public's interest and wants to ensure a professional meeting is conducted with question period focused on providing guests with the clarification they speak. Trustees are also welcome questions from members of the public apart from question period. Their contact information is available on the school district website. Tanya?
Oh, is it already on? Excellent. So Tanya Kerr, I'm the LTA president, and so Chair Ashdown. I just had a question about policy 8 with the board committees, and wondering, is the intention for that upcoming change, is that to become more transparent? Or, well, I mean, that's part of my question. And then the other part, are those committees accessible to public for to be able to attend and observe?
Yes, I can answer that. So yeah, so it's I believe the intent of the change is to make things more transparent so the public can see what's on our committee meetings, and the committee is, or the committees are open if those in the public wish to come. So yes,
Can I follow up?
of course.
So on the website, I can see under calendar, say when the next audit committee meeting is. It has a time, but it doesn't have a location. Is there a way then for that location to be on, or do we RSVP? How does that work?
I'm gonna pass this over to you.
All committee meetings are located in the boardroom here.
Thank you.
Just wanted to respond better. The audit committee is actually the most exciting committee.
I don't have enough meetings in my life, and I want to come to more. Thank you.
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Evan. I agree the audit committee is incredibly exciting. It prevents us from being in a massive financial hole again. First question, why is there a 3-month notice of motion period for April 25th? It's a fairly insubstantial change. Why does it require a 3-month notice before becoming effective?
We normally put them out for 60 days and there's no meeting in March because of spring break.
Got it.
So the next one's a month away.
Skipping 2 audit committee meetings. Second, the appeals bylaw notice of motion was served at the December meeting. Will that be addressed at the February or the April meeting?
That's not actually on the agenda, but we can look into that and get back to you.
There was no date for address in the December minutes, and in the motion it wasn't specified exactly. I'm just curious.
I'll look that up.
It'll most likely be the February meeting, which is the 60 days. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And then to the chair, but most likely to Brian. With the number of portables in the district now, I know part of the 2017 long-term facilities plan was to sort of round out a portable classroom asset management plan. I'm just curious what the current status of, sort of the management practice for the portables are, particularly on the supply chain side, sort of what we're seeing for inventory and how we're thinking about that in reference, I think, in particular to the enrollment numbers we were seeing at the last meeting and the division we're seeing between capacity and humans.
Yes, so we've just started the process earlier. So we started ordering portables for next September and May. Which so we were able to get the ones that we needed for the enrollment. The seismic one was a project that was announced a little later than that, which made it a little harder for us to be able to do so. And I think that's a practice we're going to have to do as a district going forward, is probably almost be planning our purchases a year out or more. Like with our enrollment numbers, that it's pretty safe that there's a need. You know, if we overbuy by one portable, we'll be using it the next year. So not really a big concern about that. So that is the process we've kind of done the last couple of years. We've just been forced to do that process earlier. We used to be able to get a portable in 3, 4, 5 months. Now it's 12 plus months potentially. And we're even having to look outside of the province.
Well, non-BC portables, how will we survive? Those were my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we can have a motion to adjourn. Trustee Wilson, seconded by trustee Fox. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Have a good night, everyone.